being here. I just want to make sure that everything is happening as it should be. Are we recording from this? Okay, it says recording. Okay, thanks for bearing with us with these technical challenges. If you didn't know, Mercury is retrograde right now, and it will be until the 14th of this month. So it's slowing down, but I think, we don't have to expect these kind of glitches, but there was a lot of good work that went into getting this moment prepared, including a conversation that Andre and I had, several months ago now, where I said, I'm not that far away. I would much prefer to come in person, because while Zoom makes it really convenient for us to meet when we're at great distances, I also really want to come together heart to heart. And so I'm really grateful for everyone that's here online, and also everyone that's in the room. This room here in Chicago is really wonderfully supported for the work that we're about to do. You can see behind me a rendering of one of the windows from the Goetheanum. And I'm looking, in addition to the beautiful people seated here, at these large, lovely renderings of the planetary seals, each in their order. And over near the door, there's an image that first appeared in the Calendar of the Soul, 1912, 1913. It appeared 3 times. And it shows the Christ being descending from the spiritual world and then uniting with the earth and then rising up like a star. And then also over on the right, we have a rendering of the central panel of the great red window. So just to give you a sense of where we are in the space here, those that are present can see these things. And then those of you that are online, you just get to see me. And I'm going to share some slides. And what I intend to do tonight is to kind of take a journey through the things that are visible to us in the sky as phenomena this year. And then along the way, demonstrate how I enter into that, informed by my degree in literature, my study in astrology and astronomy and astrosophy, and also most importantly, in my research and study of the work of Rudolf Steiner. And I would just like to pause and take a moment and say that it never ceases to amaze me and make me feel deeply grateful for all of the things that happen in my life because of Rudolf Steiner. And I would just say that each one of us is in this room, and this room is here because of the deeds of this individual, and how remarkable that is. I was born more than 100 years after he was born. And it's not just that the deeds of his life are a shaping influence, but that they free us in our own thinking and give us courage to take initiative and to try to do something like teaching about the stars as a human being. And it's not to disrespect the qualification that comes to getting a PhD in astronomy or in really dedicating oneself to understanding the mysteries of astrology, but to really stand forward as a human being, striving to understand what is our relationship. And do the scientific disciplines have a monopoly on the things that we can know about being human in the world? And so my life and my destiny put me in a place where I had to demonstrate for myself that I could do it just by being human. And the fact that you're all here says to me that so far we're doing something, and I'm really excited about that and deeply grateful for it. Now, what are you seeing?
We're seeing the introduction to a study of the stars as a cultural art.
Thank you so much. Okay. There we go. I might have to do this so that I can see. Okay, just a couple people. All right. Well, sometimes a bumpy start can lead to a beautiful ending. I flew today from New York to Chicago over Lake Michigan, and it was the most turbulent ride I've had in a long time. There was an audible collective whoa at one moment, but then a very soft and wonderful landing. So I'm hoping that that was a premonition for how things are going to go here. All right, so an introduction to the study of the stars as a cultural art, and I'm going to step right in and describe something that happened today, which was that we had let's see, try to step right in. Andrea, I might need your help. Oh, no, there we go. Actually, first I'm going to give you a list of the phenomena that we can see with the naked eye that I'm going to talk about tonight. So this is not an exhaustive list. This is not everything that we can see, but it's some of the highlights. And I just wanted to pick kind of the top 40 hits, just so that it's easy to get a hold of. You can write them down in your calendar. And then this is actually also an invitation from me to all of us to do research. Because one of the things that we hear from Rudolf Steiner is this awareness that we live in a time now where we can begin to be aware of how we are speaking to the stars. And when I contemplate that particular verse, which he gave to Marie Steiner on Christmas Day in 1922, it occurs to me that in order to know that I'm speaking to the stars, I might need to know something about the stars themselves. And it could be, what are the distances that they are from me on the earth, or what seasons are they in the sky? I also think of it as stars very broadly, as the phenomena that are happening in the celestial environment. And so some of these are things that repeat every year, and some of them are not. So it's just a combination of both. And just to explain what you're seeing there in the background, this is a picture of Lake Michigan, uncharacteristically very calm. And that's the planet Venus reflecting on the waters of northern Lake Michigan. All right, so some of the naked eye phenomena that I'm going to be talking about include, let's see if I'm, today there was a full moon and it was totally eclipsed. So in the Eastern time zone, it was at 1:35 a.m. or p.m., excuse me, so 12:35 here in the Central time zone. I was just landing, that bumpy ride across the lake and just landing. This wasn't visible for us in North America because the sun was above the horizon, and at full moon, the moon is exactly opposite. Nonetheless, it's an eclipse that happened on the Earth. So that happened today. So we're in the middle of the lunar cycle that began with new moon on April 20th. Now we're 2 weeks later, we have full moon, and then this lunar cycle will conclude when we get to the next new moon. Then we have the Eta Aquariid meteor shower, which is active right now from the 15th of April, actually, all the way until the 27th of May. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Then I want to talk about what Venus and Mars are doing, because they will be beautiful to watch in the evening sky in the coming weeks. And then we get the Perseid meteor shower for the first time in a couple of years, won't be diminished by full moon or by the moon. So something to look forward to. And then in August, there's what I refer to as a new school blue moon. So the second full moon in a calendar month. When we get to that slide, I'll explain what I mean by new school, because there's an old school blue moon, which is much more rare than this kind of a blue moon. Then in October, there's an annular solar eclipse that will, the shadow of it is going to go across the United States. I'll explain what an annular eclipse is and take a look at the path of where that shadow will fall. And then something that's not visible, but is notable, particularly if you are an anthroposophist. And this is where my invitation to all of us to do research really enters in, looking at what Saturn and the moon's nodes are doing in 2023. When I first came upon this, I was really just, the kind of thing that makes me catch my breath as somebody who studies the stars. So when you look at the timing and the harmony of things, it can really be delightful sometimes, but also kind of staggering, because it seems like there is something that has a hand. It's not predetermined, and yet there seems to be knowledge that we're going to arrive at a place and a note will sound of something that has already taken place. So trying to enter into the mystery of how that can be, and yet a human being has freedom. So that's a really, really awesome contemplation. Okay, so beginning first with today's full moon. So it's referred to sometimes as the flower moon. I have to, just so that I can see this. So this moon it came exactly full. As I said, it would have been 12:35 in the Central time zone where I am now. And the sun is very, very close right now to the planet Uranus. So Uranus is the first planet to be discovered. I used to say the first planet to be discovered with the use of a telescope. But if we look back at the first beginnings of human beings recording themselves on the Earth, the classical planets are there from the get-go. So we can find a rendering of Sun, of Moon, of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. They aren't discovered, they're there. But Uranus is discovered. Human beings invent the telescope. William Herschel is looking into the sky. He thinks it's a comet doesn't really see a tail. A year later, he sees it again in the same region of the sky, and he realizes that it's a planet. So this was in the 1700s. He was working under the service of King George III, who was at war with his American colonists. And William Herschel wanted to name the planet for his king. And the Americans said, we're not going to call it George. But also imagine, I may have said this before, but it still tickles me. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, George. Like it just doesn't work. So it took a while, but eventually the decision was made to call the planet Uranus after the classical god from the Greek culture, Uranos, who's the father of space. He's the sky god, out of which time, or chronos, Saturn, is born. Time emerges from space. So even as late as the 1700s, we can see that there's some harmony going on, even though there may no longer have been this ancient idea or experience that each of us comes from a star, but that there's something still sounding through the naming, at least as far as Uranus goes. Then in the next century, we get the discovery of Neptune, which was first predicted by mathematics, and then later the next century with the discovery of Pluto, which is discovered using something called a blinkometer, which is this machine that shakes an image and you look for something to catch your eye. It's really phenomenal to think about how we move away from human beings standing on the earth, looking into the celestial environment and making discovery that way, to using machines to detect and discern what we're seeing, not only what we're seeing, but where are we in the cycle of the year. We no longer go out to do ceremony at a stone megalith and watch the shadow and the falling of the light to say it's the solstice moment. Now you can Google it up pretty easily, and they're using a reference to something called the Universal Celestial Reference Frame, which is measuring 220 extragalactic points to determine the Earth-Sun relationship to say that's the moment of the solstice. Really far removed from having a direct observational experience of our environment. But tonight, if you have clear skies, not long after the sun sets, you should see a beautiful, beautiful, nearly full moon rising, and knowing that it was totally eclipsed today, which means that it stood fully in the shadow of the Earth. So the Earth is always casting a shadow into space, but we only see it when the moon shows it to us. And in speaking about former cultures and what they believed to be happening during an eclipse, Rudolf Steiner described how when there wasn't an eclipse, souls that are coming to birth on the earth stream earthward on the rays of the moonbeams. But that when there's an eclipse, when the moon is standing in the shadow of the earth, something else is happening. Our shadow is being fully reflected to us, and darkness streams down. Evil, something that streams earthward toward, he goes so far as to say, that which has prepared itself for it. So I can. Yeah, so if we think, so I've been asked a question about describing this again. So I would just like to give us this sense. We're on the earth. And the earth is wherever the sun is relative to the earth, it's casting its shadow in the opposite direction. And the moon, when it's at the right place on the plane of its orbit, will come through the earth's shadow. And then the moon will reflect our shadow to us. And Rudolf Steiner describes this as a moment when thoughts stream down in darkness. And it can be evil thoughts. And they stream toward those who have prepared themselves for them, which is kind of a startling statement. Elsewhere in describing evil, and if we think about evil, what is the relationship of evil to the human being? It's fundamentally connected to freedom. Very difficult thing to grapple with, I think. But then when we look at the celestial environment and we see eclipses are not random. They're happening every year, twice a year. They're not always total. And we can have more than 4 eclipses in a year. You'll have a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse in one season. 6 months later, you'll have a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse. Sometimes the moon eclipse comes first. And there's a lot of ways that you can read what's going on there by looking at where is it in the sky? Did the lunar eclipse come first? When is the node of the moon in the position where the eclipse occurred? Because it's connected to the node, which is this point where the plane of the Earth's orbit is intersected by the plane of the moon's orbit, and everything lines up. But first, we have to have this relationship to moon. Moon is a reflecting body. In the lecture that I know by the title, The Spiritual Individualities of the Planets, Rudolf Steiner describes how, and this was in July of 1923, the moon doesn't tell us anything about itself. The moon is like a mighty cosmic mirror, just reflecting. And so what is reflected toward us at an eclipse is our shadow. So just to kind of live into that phenomenologically, what is it when I experience my shadow? And I could say, well, I'm always casting a physical shadow, but when we think about what is the shadow nature in the human being, and is that augmented during an eclipse? So it's a question that I would carry. And then you can say, all right, so an eclipse has just occurred today. There will be a new moon in 2 weeks. So I could do some research for the next 2 weeks to see, am I noticing anything? And you kind of have to watch this for a while to really start to develop a relationship with moon and knowing where it is, what phase it's in. Is it above the horizon? Is it below? So these are just fundamental questions and just a first step. Yeah, go ahead.
Could you say anything about about the lunar or solar eclipse coming first or second?
I could say, so for those of you that are online, the question in the room that's been asked, if I could say something about, I'll say the difference between what happens if the solar eclipse precedes a lunar eclipse or vice versa. So in the case we have right now, 2023, we had a total solar eclipse at the new moon. So that was the lead. And gosh, I wasn't prepared to go there. So you're going to watch me try to go there. I think when it's a solar eclipse first, if I put it in the context of what Rudolf Steiner says, a solar eclipse is different than a lunar eclipse. A lunar eclipse, something is streaming down. At a solar eclipse, it's as though something is being released. And so you could say the substance of our deeds is streaming out toward the cosmos and is woven through with sunlight, unless there's an eclipse. When the moon blocks the sun, there's no sunlight to weave through the substance of our deeds, and it's released into the wider cosmos. So it's actually kind of like a safety, so that the consequence of our deeds, or good or ill, is kind of diluted because it's spread out over a wider arena. And this might be a little bit too physical way to think about it, but this is what I imagine. Why would you say, oh, it's like a safety valve on a steam engine? Something is being released so you don't have an explosion. So when the solar eclipse leads, it feels like something is let off. So there's kind of a release, so that when the lunar eclipse follows, potentially it's not as strong as if it leads. This is one way I would imagine it. You have the lunar eclipse first. Now you've got this kind of intensity of the shadow. And while, yes, something's going to be released, there's also the potential that there's greater intensity. Again, it's a research. So we're going to have this again in 6 months, solar eclipse followed by lunar eclipse. Yeah, it's not always that way.
Like,
I would have to look and see. It's not always that way because it's moving so the moon can come to eclipse. Yeah, it's moving. They can't see it?
no.
Now? Okay. Okay, we're hoping that everyone online can see the speaker. And so let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Christine. If you could give me a thumbs up that you can see my little tile. Great, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so moving on. And if you have questions online about this, I'm hoping we can get to this at the end. It's not easy for me to manage the chat while I'm chatting. So I'm going to keep moving. And if you have a question, just drop it into the chat and then we'll get there. Okay, thank you for your indulgence, everybody online. All right, so next. I'm just not friends with your keypad. Okay, next we had the Eta Aquariid meteor shower. And so that's actually happening right now. And the peak of it is tonight. So we just had full moon, which means the moon is going to pretty much swallow up all of the light that's available to us in the night sky. Still, I think it's a wonderful thing to know about. And if you can't see a meteor shower, you can know that you're sleeping in one, you know? I mean, and the Eta Aquaria is actually more visible in the southern hemisphere, but still it's possible to see some of it happening in the northern hemisphere. And as this is from one of my favorite meteor shower websites, it's called the American Meteor Society. And they've got all kinds of information there. But this image shows a rendering of the constellation Aquarius and where the Eta Aquariid star is, which is right at this, it's like a little triangle of stars that marks the jug or the water pot of the Aquarian waterman. And he's pouring water through the sky at that spot where this meteor shower seems to radiate out into the sky. There's so much poetry in that. And thinking about all of the association that we make with Aquarius and its relationship to the future and to a brotherhood and a sisterhood amongst human beings on the earth, and that there are stars that just radiate through the sky at this time of year. And in the Christian festival calendar, we're in this time between Easter and Ascension, coming toward Whitsun, and this meteor shower is happening that's kind of sounding out from this region of the sky where there is this hallmark of brotherhood, you could say. And so a meteor shower, although it's caused by a comet, is not named after the comet that causes it. It's named after the constellation in front of which it seems to appear. And so if you hear Aquarius, if you hear Perseus, if you hear Orion, it's because that's the region of the sky where the shower seems to radiate from. You don't have to be looking at the constellation to see the meteor shower, but the rule of thumb is when that constellation is above the horizon, that's when you have the greatest activity. So yes, go ahead.
Caused by the comet.
By the comet. So a comet will come through our planetary system, and sometimes there are short periodicity or long periodicity comets that will repeat, like Halley's Comet has a periodic orbit of 76 years, I think. And that means it's coming through our planetary system every 76 years. And what happens is, as a comet comes, it kind of dives sunward, break up as it's moving through our planetary system. And then we're on our orbit, and we will pass through the trail of stuff that a comet left behind it. And when it hits our atmosphere, we see it burning up as falling stars. What the ancients believed was much more poetic. They believed that, well, so first you have to think about the planetary bodies surrounding the Earth. The Earth is at the center. The Earth lives at the center of the attention of a living cosmos. The first heaven described by the moon sphere. The second heaven by what would be called Mercury. The third heaven, Venus. The fourth heaven, Sun. So not just the sun itself, but the entire sphere described by what would be recognized as the orbit. The fifth heaven, Mars, the sixth, Jupiter, the seventh heaven was Saturn. And it was believed by the ancients that on occasion, the gods would look down to see what human beings were doing on the earth, and they would kind of part the curtain between the spheres and peer down, and the stars could fall through where they had made that parting. And the reason you wish on a star is because at that moment that a star is falling, it's because a god is looking. And if you cast your wish to a falling star, it will come true because the gods are paying attention. It's so beautiful. And then if you say, it's an Aquarian god, or it's the Perseid hero, and this is just a really lovely imagination. And I think it's a valid way to contemplate a relationship to the celestial environment, because we can learn things through the scientific disciplines, but we can also learn things through poetry and art, things that can't necessarily be spoken about so easily as they can intellectually. So we need that. Okay, so thanks for the question. Yeah, so you can, I have up here the information about this. The Eta Aquariid meteor shower is actually caused by Halley's Comet. Ah, yes, thank you. Yes, and I can repeat it as well. Okay. All right, so thank you everyone online for indulging us, we who are in the room, and thank you everyone in the room for indulging all of those who are online. This is an interesting space. I'm standing in a threshold. So it's just going to own that. And I'm really glad to be supported by everyone that's in the room and all of these renderings of images from anthroposophy that are here to support. Okay, so Eta Aquariid meteor shower active now, comes to its peak overnight tonight, May 5th to the 6th, 2023. The moon will be swallowing up all of the available light. Nonetheless, it's happening. All right, and this is just another image. This comes from Sky and Telescope magazine, so that you can kind of get an idea of where to look. So if you look toward the east, this is when it's most active, so it's just before dawn, looking toward the east. So I'm in Chicago right now, so it's really unusual for me to look east across the lake because I live in Michigan. I look west across the lake. So I don't have that eastern view. So maybe I'll get up early, go out and take a look. Yeah, see if we can see it. So the moon actually, at this time of morning, the moon will be setting in the west, but dawn will be coming. So there's a lot of different factors that will be involved, but just so that you can get a look at this. So what you see, I also wanted to point out that the water that's being poured by the Aquarian waterman is not going toward, it looks in this map like it's oriented toward the circlet of Pisces, the fishes, but the water actually streams into the mouth of the southern fish, which is a different constellation. It's not Pisces, it's Piscis Austrinus. And so this is going to be important later on. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, but just to give you a sense that the water of the Aquarian water pot is pouring into the mouth of the southern fish. Okay, the next phenomena that I wanted to talk about is the beloveds, Venus and Mars. All right, so Venus and Mars are, if we don't think about them after the moon, they are the two planets, I'm talking astronomically, the two planets closest to the Earth. So Mars, the first planet as we go from Earth away from the sun, and Venus, astronomically, the planet closest to us is between Earth and sun. So in the ancient Greek mythology, well, Mars and Venus are their Roman names. So Ares and Aphrodite in the Greek, they are caught in an illicit love affair. Venus, Aphrodite, is married to Hephaestus, the metalsmith, but she's in love with Mars. And so Hephaestus sets a trap for them. He makes a metal net, and he says to her that he's going to be gone. He knows that they're coming together, so he hides this net, and then he captures them in their trysting spot, and then hangs them up in this net, and then calls all of the gods to ridicule them. I love what happens to the net next, though, and that is that Hermes, Mercury, steals it away to use it to catch his beloved Flora, who's a flower nymph that has the task in the service of Aurora to scatter the rose petals before the rising sun each morning. So Hermes takes the net to the sunrise spot and casts it over that place and waits. So I think about this as a moment of what Mercury is doing right now, is kind of slowing down in its path and waiting. This is the fleet-footed messenger of the gods, coming still for love. So we're kind of in the midst of that right now, but then Venus and Mars, what they're doing is coming closer and closer to one another. This little piece that I excerpted from a calendar that I get from Michigan State University Abrams Planetarium shows what they'll be doing toward the end of June and coming right toward the summer solstice. So you can see on June 19th, the moon will be new, just a crescent moving up by Castor and Pollux in Gemini. Then you've got the beehive cluster at the center of the constellation Cancer. And then Venus will be brilliant as evening star and Mars not far away. Then on the next day, June 20th, the moon is getting bigger, getting closer. Then on the 21st, which happens to be summer solstice, that's going to be a beautiful sight. If you look at what Venus and Mars are doing with the moon on this day, June 21st. So it's something worth marking your calendar for. And I take these as opportunities to read poetry, to read the mythology, to try to enter into what might this mean just to that poetic sense of myself. It's not just a cool thing to see in the night sky, or is it? So Venus and Mars have been doing something kind of interesting over the last couple of years. In December of 2021, Venus, okay, so I'm going to back up. There was a total solar eclipse. When the sun is eclipsed, it doesn't turn exactly nighttime in the sky, but the light definitely shifts, and the brightest objects in the sky become visible. After sun and moon, the brightest thing in the sky is Venus. So when the sun is eclipsed, Venus is unveiled. We see Venus at a time of day and in a region of the sky where we would not otherwise see her. She's veiled by light. And when the light is blocked by the moon, then Venus is unveiled. So this happened at the beginning of December. It happens every time there's a total solar eclipse, potentially. Venus is unveiled. So the beginning of December 2021. And then Venus started a retrograde motion. And well, actually, I take that back. Venus continued on from that eclipse, kind of in this unveiled state, and came to the same degree of the zodiac as the dwarf planet Pluto. Then Venus started a retrograde, and on Christmas Day, 2021, Venus met Pluto again. Through the holy nights, Venus was still retrograde. Now it's 2022 in January. Venus started to turn direct. Mars caught up with her, and at the beginning of March, they met. Venus, Mars, and Pluto. So these are the beloveds, together with the god of the underworld. If Venus is Persephone, this is the Lord and Master to whom she's been given against her will. But here's the beloved come to escort her through this situation. Okay, so that was March 2022. Then Venus moved on, Mars did a retrograde, and now they're coming back together again. And they're not really going to get to the exact same degree of the zodiac until February next year, and they'll be almost in the same region of the sky, and Pluto will not be far away. So I'm saying all of this because as a star lore historian, I'm watching that story. What's happening? What's going on, you two? What are you doing? What's happening in my life? Can I find this in the world? Is it showing up in a dream? It's a beautiful sight to see in the sky. Is there something more? If I don't know that it's happening, then it's going to go right by me. But if I want to know that I'm speaking to the stars, I'm going to listen in to the phenomena and see. So I want us to look at this. This is beautiful. It's beautiful to see this kind of phenomena in the sky, but then also to think about the fact that it's summer solstice and the moon is going to snuggle up with Venus and Mars. Really, really lovely. Yeah, because so the question in the room is they're not really going to meet until next February. I'm going to let you do that. I'm going to keep talking because they'll get very close to the and then Venus retrograde and Mars. So she almost.
You're not in the microphone, so we're not hearing that. So
thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so when Venus almost with Mars and then falls back, this is Orpheus and Eurydice. I mean, she's and then.
Okay, I think you need to speak to the computer for us to hear you.
Thank you. Sorry, it was a person in the room that asked the question. I was talking to her.
Oh.
So talking about the potential imagination, the imagination that I have about what happens when Venus is trying to catch up with Mars, but then begins a retrograde before they become exactly conjunct. And I think of this in relationship to the mythology of Orpheus and Eurydice. And I even wonder, is this where the story comes from? So not that I could just apply it to that phenomena, but was this a way to describe that? These are the beloveds. This one has gone into the underworld. Mars tries to catch up. You know, it's the masculine and the feminine. I allow myself a broad interpretation just to try things on to see, does it fit? Does it work? And it requires a long-term listening. And sometimes you just have to discard the idea. It didn't work. You forced it too much. But I think we owe it to ourselves to have courage in our imaginations and to recognize what really fits. What am I pushing too hard on? Can I let go? One of the astrological interpretations I read about today's lunar eclipse is that, yeah, this is 2 weeks to just get rid of the stuff that's not working. You want to go astrologically about it, to look, is that happening in my life? Do I have to take it from an astrologer that that's really what's going to go on? Maybe that isn't what's happening for me. So it's just listening and trying to discern. I think of this as a training in how to understand our capacity for imaginative cognition, because there's a lot of information and a lot of activity streaming toward us. And the striving is to be able to discern what endures, because that's how I make it through this ceaselessly moving realm of living imaginations to get to the inspiration. And once I get to that level of relationship with the unseen, supersensible world, now I can begin to orient there. Entering into this space and the success of developing inspirative cognition is oftentimes referred to as reading the occult script. So the planets and the stars, these are vowels and consonants. It's literally a scripting that's happening. And we have mythologies and we have star lore, and these things are handed down through the centuries and we hear them as stories. It was actually something that's being spoken to the human being from the stars to give guidance and wisdom. And so trying to uncover that. All right, so I just want to show another image from the Michigan State University sky calendar so that you can see. This is at the beginning of July then, where they're going to be much closer. And they'll be very close to the star Regulus, which is the heart of the lion. So not only is the moon together with Venus and Mars at the summer solstice, when the sun comes to its standing still spot, I can't help it. I would just say the first step is, all right, we're going to stand still for love. Love one another as I have loved you. Faith, hope, love. The greatest of these is love. So to really enter into a solstice mood with love. And to see this as something that's being written across the sky, and the moon is kind of holding it in its chalice. And then when we get to July, we'll see that Venus and Mars, this will be kind of close to the horizon. So you have to be in a good environment where you can really see the horizon very clearly. But then Venus and Mars will be very close to Regulus, which is at the heart of the lion, the heart star. Yeah. Yeah. All right, then we get to the Perseid meteor shower. So the Perseid in August, the 12th to the 13th of August, they're active from the end of like the middle of July all the way into September. The way to know whether the falling star that you've seen is a Perseid is to follow the trail of it backward, and it should point to the constellation Perseus. Because sometimes you have overlapping meteor showers and it looks like they're going in different directions. And if you just try to follow the trail back, you can see where is it coming from. So again, sky and telescope, this is a map that shows the constellation Perseus and where the radiant is. So it's that yellow plus sign there. And so the Perseid is probably the most popular meteor shower each year. My experience is that while it can be prolific, the Geminid that comes in December is actually the most active meteor shower that I've ever witnessed. Not as well known as the Perseid. But the Perseid really marks the beginning of meteor shower season. And so I like to imagine that if former cultures referred to it by the name Perseid, that it was really out of a relationship to Perseus, or Zeus. He's a son of Zeus. And his story from the Greek culture, again, is that he's born from a shower of golden stars. His mother, Danae, it's prophesied to her father, King Acrisius, that she will have a son that will slay him. So, of course, he doesn't want this to happen. So he builds a vault in the earth, a brass vault in the earth, and she's imprisoned there. So she can have no interaction or intercourse with anyone on the earth. Zeus happens by, and seeing her imprisoned there, it's open to the stars above. So he transforms himself into a shower of stars and rains down upon her. And one of the things that I think is really beautiful about the Perseid is that Perseus comes to its highest place, the constellation comes to its highest place in the sky 9 months ahead of this shower. So there's kind of a conception moment that's going on there. And Rudolf Steiner, in speaking about this particular meteor shower, describes how it is connected to giving us strength and courage in the blood. When the meteors fall through the sky, it's kind of like iron streaming through our blood that gives us strength, Michaelic will. So the Perseid should be, if you've got good weather, it won't be diminished by the moon this year. And I'll just say that you're all invited to come on a midnight meteor shower cruise with me. I don't know, Paulette, if you've been on that one. Yeah, so we leave from Mackinac City up in northern Michigan at 11 p.m. and we cruise west underneath the Mackinac Bridge and float out on Lake Michigan underneath the Milky Way and the falling stars, and it's spectacular. So that will be the weekend of the peak. So like 11th and the 12th, I do a couple right there in a row. And I'll just share, this doesn't always happen. And in fact, it only happened once. I've been doing this for about 12 years. There was a big storm coming. And I said to the captain, we're not going, right? He said, oh, that storm is like 50 miles south of us. But I said, yeah, but we're going to be out on open water, like the 5th largest body of fresh water in the world. That storm could go anywhere. He said, no, that's not coming anywhere near us. So I was terrified. We're on a big barge. We use a ferry boat now, but we were on a big barge. And sure enough, it never blew north, but we could see it only when the lightning flashed and these big thunderheads, the edges of them would turn gold when the lightning flashed. And then you've got the Milky Way overhead and the meteor shower active. Okay, so Zeus is god of thunder and lightning. Perseus is his son. Look at this father-son battle going on in the sky. And when it was time to come back, so we're out there from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., we swung the boat around to come back, and over the northern Upper Peninsula in Michigan, the Northern Lights. We were all just like all of the phenomena. It was all happening. It was so amazing. So I can't guarantee that will happen, but you never know. So Shepler's ferry service. I do these cruises with Shepler's, and they're a lot of fun. And Paulette here is here to witness. I don't know if anybody else has been, but yeah. I think I am.
That's for us.
I think the folks, Dick, can you give me a thumbs up if you have been seeing me on the screen? Okay. Now you are. Were you not seeing me?
I'm not seeing.
Can see
I'm
you.
not seeing you.
We're seeing you the whole
I
time.
can.
Okay.
The viewer controls that through.
Thank you, Sandra. Okay, so the viewer controls it. I just want you folks online to know that the folks that are in the room are concerned about what you can see. So they want to make sure that you're
Upper
able
right
to
corner view, speaker or gallery. I mean,
Okay.
I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
So-
the right corner view can't see your screen because it's blocked by the all the various people.
So Dick, I think if you go to the top right of your screen where it says view, you can
Yes.
pick speaker or gallery.
Well,
And
and
that would
there's
change.
also side-by-side speaker and side-by-side gallery. And I think the system knows that those are options when the screen is being shared. In any case, if you do side-by-side, then you won't have anything blocking her screen.
Yes, great, thank you.
Thanks for all the support. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure everyone else does too. Okay, so Perseid meteor shower. And then I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the showers that come after the Perseid. So I just want to give us the dates. So the peak of the Perseid will be August 12th to the 13th. If everyone could mute themselves, that would be great. Let's see, I think I can. Okay. And then the Orionid is the next big shower. There's the Draconid that comes just a week before the Orionid. It's not a really strong shower for us, but the Orionid meteor shower happens in October. It gets its name from the constellation Orion, so you could imagine it's the shower of the giant. And this is followed by the Taurid meteor shower in November from the constellation Taurus. This peaks overnight, November 11th to 12th, followed immediately by the Leonid. The Leonid was the meteor shower that there was just this tremendous display of Leonids in the 1800s, and everybody thought the world was ending. Yeah. So that one can be remarkable. And then the Geminid comes in December. Now, the interesting thing about the Geminid is that it's caused by, not by a comet, but something that is classified as a rock comet, kind of like an asteroid, Phaeton. And astronomers are discovering new things out about it all the time. And the reason it's significant that it's not a comet is because a comet will come through our planetary system and it will break up and it will leave a trail of stuff. Phaeton, which causes the Geminid, doesn't seem to have those qualities. So it's not easy to understand how the meteor shower is happening. The trajectory of the falling stars matches the path of that object, but it's a mystery. I love it when it's like a mystery. And then at winter solstice, the Ursid meteor shower. So the only time I've ever seen the Ursids is, in winter, the Big Dipper is right up on its end. And so it's like the meteors just fall straight down to the earth. So instead of like shooting through the sky, they're coming straight down to the earth. Yeah. Right from the dippers, like right straight down. Like it's like just announcing the solstice or announcing the sacred birth. Really, really beautiful. So not a prolific meteor shower like the Perseid or the Geminid. Nonetheless, it's active at the winter solstice time. So at summer solstice, we have Moon together with Venus and Mars. At winter solstice, we'll have the Ursid meteor shower. And that happens each year. Okay. I wanted us also to get a look at where these things are in the sky relative to one another. So this is a map of the entire sky. The blue line that's going through the center is the celestial equator, and then the curved line is the ecliptic, and it's along that path where we find all of the constellations of the zodiac. So the first meteor shower that I was talking about is the Perseid. So this is the constellation Perseus right here. So you can see he's above the ecliptic. He's a great hero. All the heroes are in the northern celestial hemisphere. All the monsters are down below. So this is the way it was articulated by the ancients, at least in the Western astronomy that we get. Yes, Kim. So the question in the room is, does it depend on the time of year where along the ecliptic the constellations will appear? So the constellations remain in the same relationship to the ecliptic that you see here, but we're moving. So it looks to us like the sun is moving along that path. And so if the sun is in the region, like if it's right up here in this region of Gemini, we're not seeing those stars because the sunlight is there. But if the sun is down here in Sagittarius, then we're seeing that region of the sky where Perseus is. Does that answer it? Okay. So this is the radiant for the Perseid meteor shower is in the region of the constellation Perseus. Then next is the constellation Orion for the Orionid meteor shower in October, followed by the Taurids, followed by the Leonids, followed by the Geminids. And this is phenomenal. This is the region where all the meteor showers are happening. And then the Ursids. So I haven't really, this is a question for me. Why? Why there? And why not somewhere else? I mean, there are things falling through the sky all the time, but these are the really active meteor showers that for centuries have been watched and charted by human beings. But I think it's really phenomenal to look at the distribution and how tightly distributed they are in one region of the sky. And in one season, we get to the last quarter of the year. For us in the Northern Hemisphere, the daylight is waning. The starlight is increasing. So it's this strength that we're given to face outer darkness with an inner wakefulness. Okay. Lots of wishes, lots of gods peering in on us. Okay, so then we have a blue moon, and a blue moon is not a moon that looks blue. So the moon is never going to look like this. This is an artist rendering. The moon will exhibit beautiful colors when it's close to the horizon. The way this was described to me is that when we look across the horizon, we're looking through more of Earth's atmosphere. It gets more dense. Let's remember that I have my degree in English literature. I can recite poetry about the moon, but can't necessarily describe this moon phenomena, where the moon seems to us to be like really orange red when it's rising up, but then as it goes up, it gets more golden, and then it can even appear very white. But always we get these, when we get those really dramatic colors, it's at the horizon. So in August, there will be 2 full moons. So one at the beginning of the month, and then the second one on August 30th. So in current tradition, only since the 1940s, the second full moon in one calendar month is regarded as the blue moon. So the 1940s, because it was suggested by a writer for Sky and Telescope magazine. The traditional definition of a blue moon is that in each season, there are 3 months. So typically there will be 3 full moons. But on occasion, we will have 4 full moons, and the third one is considered the blue moon. And I've wrestled with this for a long time to try to figure out what makes that unique. And I thought, well, maybe it's because the calendar makers, that extra moon was throwing things off. That's not really, I stuck with that for a while, and then I had to say, no, that's not good enough. So now I'm going to share with you what I think now. I think a traditional blue moon, I know that kind of blue moon can only happen in February, May, August, and November. Because you have to measure from the equinox or the solstice, and a full moon has to happen really close to equinox or solstice for you to end up with 4 full moons in one season. The third one is always going to happen in the month before the solstice or the equinox. So that's how you get February, May, August, or November. Now, there are 4 significant stars that were regarded by the ancient Persians as the guardians of the heavens. They're called the royal stars, the 4 royal stars of Persia. Fomalo, which is the mouth of the southern fish into which Aquarius is pouring the water. Opposite is Regulus in Leo, and then square to that is Aldebaran in Taurus and Antares in Scorpio. If the sun, in our view, moving through the sky of February, the region of Aquarius, so it's with that star Fomalo, opposite, you'll have Regulus. So if you have a true blue moon in in February, it's going to be near the star Regulus. If the sun is with Leo in August, that blue moon is going to be with Fomalo. So I think now that the thing that makes a blue moon significant in the old school definition is that it lights up that cross. So the sun is at one pole with one of the 4 royal stars, the full moon is with the other one. So the August blue moon this year is a new school blue moon. Nonetheless, it's still going to be in the vicinity of that star Fomalo. I just want to show this graphic.
Mhm.
So what you can see here is these 4 royal stars highlighted. So this one is Fomalo. So it's just below Aquarius. So the Aquarius waterman is pouring the water out of his urn into the mouth of the southern fish. This would be opposite, we have Leo. So this is the star Regulus. And then this would be marking the pole of Aldebaran. Here's Taurus right here, and that's the star. But this artist put that star on the circle. And then opposite Aldebaran is Antares in Scorpio. So these are the 4 stars that mark the 4 royal stars of Persia. And I like this description from Nick Fiorenza about Fomalo. bearing in mind, I'm bringing this up because right now is the peak of the Eta Aquariid meteor shower, and the Aquarian waterman is pouring his water into the mouth of the southern fish that's marked by the star Fomolo. And also in August, we have this blue moon. It will be near this star Fomolo. And this is one of the ways it's described. Fomolo, one of the four royal architects, inspires future vision for an evolved humanitarian-based society. Fomolo inspires new ideas and pursuits in the art sciences, in technology, and in social issues of the world. Fomolo promotes the flow of resources within the human populace that creates a wholesome human condition. Fomolo defies convention and compartmentalization, but supports individuality, progress, and freedom. Really beautiful associations with this star. So something worth paying attention to and knowing how to pronounce. Looks like Fomalhaut, but it's Fomolo. Also, it goes on. Though some sources have described Fomolo as a reddish star, it is classified as a blue-white class A star, like Vega and Deneb. So Vega is the bright star in Lyra, and Deneb is the tail star of the Swan. Perhaps it is because the area surrounding it is largely devoid of bright stars. So it's kind of there by itself. Aquarius is not a really bright region of stars. We're looking away from the center of the Milky Way galaxy in that region of sky. And so there are not a lot of bright stars there where Fomolo is. So along with the stars that are near 12 degrees of Gemini, which are Aldebaran and the Pleiades, Fomolo has been associated with immortality. It is also equated with the Persian god Zal and is said to bestow charisma and to engender the test of remaining true to our ideals. I want to draw attention to this because of my next slide. And before I go there, I just want to say that I take full responsibility for what I'm sharing, and it's not necessarily what was meant. I just want to say that it's a question. Is this what you were referring to? So it's something that Rudolf Steiner said at the end of the Christmas conference. You estimate what time of day did it end? There was an evening lecture, the close of the World History Lectures, probably started at a certain time in the evening, and trying to calculate a chart for that moment. What can you see? And so in the sidereal zodiac, at that moment in Dornoch, there's Fomolo, you can see that this region, I'm sorry, I don't have the cursor, so I'm hoping that everybody will stay with me. When you look at this chart, if you imagine it like the face of a clock, then 9 o'clock would be on the left, where you see 11 degrees of Leo, and exactly opposite would be 3 o'clock, 11 degrees Aquarius, and that's where Fomolo is. So if you estimate the closing of the Christmas conference around 9:30 p.m., hour and a half for that evening lecture, Fomolo was setting in the west. What Rudolf Steiner said at that moment. And so, my dear friends, bear out with you into the world your warm hearts, in whose soil you have laid the foundation stone for the Anthroposophical Society. Bear out with you your warm hearts in order to do work in the world that is strong in healing. Help will come to you because your heads will be enlightened by what you all now want to be able to direct in conscious willing. Let us today make this resolve with all our strength, and we shall see that if we show ourselves to be worthy, then a good star will shine over that which is willed from here. My dear friends, follow this good star. We shall see whither the gods shall lead us through the light of this room. So I want to qualify this by saying that I don't necessarily think that Rudolf Steiner was speaking about one specific star. It's potentially a star that's becoming. It gives a beautiful description of how the incarnation of the Christ is a uniting of the sun being with the earth, and it's the beginning of the earth becoming a star. So it could very well be a reference to this future evolution of the earth. But I do think that it's a beautiful imagination when you look at this interpretation of the star Fomolo that gives us the strength to stay true to our ideals. It has to do with the future progress of humanity, a brotherhood and a sisterhood of human beings. It rings to this. So it's a star worth finding in the sky. And there's a meteor shower that's happening in that region of the sky tonight. And there's a full moon in August that will be not far from that star. It's just, I think, it gives depth to our experience of the cycle of the year. So I just want to say that I'm not saying that Rudolf Steiner is, being cryptic about the star fulminal, but there's just this lovely potentiality that's there. Eclipses. So coming in October, everybody good? I have no idea what time it is. It's 8 o'clock. We're still good? Okay. All right, shifting gears to the next phenomenon. On October 14th in 2023, just less than 6 months from now, or is it exactly 6 months? I can't do the math. There will be an annular solar eclipse. So an annular eclipse happens when the moon is at that place in its orbit around the Earth where it's furthest away from us. So the moon is not going around us in a circle. The moon is going around us in an ellipse. So that means that sometimes it's closer to us and sometimes it's further away. The closest moon to us, when it comes full, we call it a perigee moon, popularly known as supermoon. There isn't an equal name for moon that's furthest away from us when it's full, but that's apogee. So an annular eclipse is caused when the moon comes full at its apogee and it's in front of the sun. And so it will block the sun, but not the entire sun. So you get a ring of fire around the moon. Really a remarkable phenomenon. So this is coming on October 14th, and this is the path of it. Part of the path that's just going through the United States. After it goes through the Gulf of Mexico, it's going to go through Central and South America as well. I spoke about this at the Sophia conference in Santa Fe in 2022. It's interesting to me because it's going over Los Alamos, which is the site of the lab where the research was done for the atomic bomb. This eclipse is also in Saros cycle 134. Saros cycles are a way astronomers will group eclipses that belong to one another together. They extend over several centuries, and it's connected to the rhythm of time when the moon will come to an eclipse close to its node. It shifts over time, so it doesn't always stay in front of the same region of the zodiac. However, they're joined together by this 18.5-year rhythm. So this eclipse cycle began in 1248, so many centuries ago, but an interesting period in history. It recurred every 18 years. I mean, it keeps going. What will happen is you imagine the globe of the Earth. And when an eclipse starts to happen, the shadow that the moon is sending back to us will fall over the southern limb of the Earth, like down at the South Pole. And then 18 years later, it will shift north. 18 years later, it will shift again. 18 years until it all the way gets to total eclipse. Then it keeps going north, north, north. And after several centuries, it's all the way to the north. And then it's off the Earth. So just circling around on the Earth. So this is how you can track the dates. So a Saros cycle 134 had an eclipse that occurred in 1861, the year that Rudolf Steiner was born, again in 1879. So this is the beginning of the age of Michael, again in 1915. Gratianum is being built, 1933. Significant date that Rudolf Steiner pointed to in relationship to the mystery of our time, which has to do with the etheric Christ. So this is this eclipse that's coming on October 14th is in that same cycle. So also something that should call our attention. You don't have to be in the path of an eclipse to engage with it, I think. However, if it's happening in your geographic region, and it's an amazing phenomenon, it's worth it to get there. Yeah. So some of us are gathering in New Mexico. All right, that's not the only eclipse that's going on. I want to talk about some other eclipses as well. So this is an image of an annular eclipse. So this is taken looking toward the sun. It gives the impression that the sky is really dark. The sky doesn't get that dark during an eclipse. It gets kind of a deep blue, really, really deep. And the stars start to show up. Now, I have not been in the path of an annular eclipse, but I'm assuming that Venus will show up. And I really think that in this image, Botticelli is depicting some of this mystery. The birth of Venus is kind of an unveiling. And she's being blown toward the shore by the zephyr. There are flowers there. It also has a mystery of a Pentecost moment, the rushing winds. You can think of an annular eclipse like the flaming tongues of the sun. And love is born potentially out of that. A capacity to speak from heart to heart. So I think of this as a beautiful cultural context in which to imagine this kind of a phenomena. And then just to complete that, Botticelli, that's one of the hours waiting there on the shore to receive Venus once she's been born. Okay. 2 weeks later, there will be a lunar eclipse. So on this map, what you're seeing is the area that's in white is where the eclipse will be visible. And then it gets various shades of gray. And you can see the eastern part of the United States will be able to see part of the eclipse. So that eastern part of the United States is not going to see the annular solar eclipse, but it is going to be able to, we will be able to see the this lunar eclipse. And this one comes pretty close to the eve of cross quarters. So this is on October 28th, partial lunar eclipse. Then on April 8th, 2024, a total solar eclipse coming up through the United States. The path of it going right over to the Great Lakes, including Niagara Falls. So this eclipse will be twice as long at its maximum as the 2017 eclipse. I have a picture of it I can show you. So one of our friends in the room was saying, oh, it's just exactly opposite the 2017. So I just want to show you. So this is the path of the 2017 total solar eclipse. It went from the west of the United States all the way across to the southeast and out. So that was in August of 2017. Then we have this annular solar eclipse. It's coming in October this year. That's also coming in that Pacific Northwest region and swooping further south than the 2017 eclipse. And then the April 2024 coming up and going across. It creates this really interesting form across the United States. So one of the things that I think is really interesting is to look at the dates. The first one, 2017, and then the second one, in terms of the total solar eclipses, 2024, there's 7 years between them. So in every cycle of 7, the point of turn is the 4th year. So that would have been 2021. It's really interesting to look at like what's happening in the world in 2021 or what's happening in the United States in a 7-year cycle. So not that these two eclipses belong to each other by anything other than geography, because they're coming across this continent, this mass of land, 7 years apart from one another. There's a lot more in that eclipse narrative that I could talk about, but I just want to give you this picture so that you can see. So the 2017 eclipse already happened. Then we've got the annular eclipse in this year in October. So it's not total, but it will be that ring of fire around the moon. And then next year on April 8th, Easter will have already happened because Easter is early next year. The vernal full moon happens on, gosh, I can't remember the date, maybe the 22nd, but Easter comes on March 25th next year. So by the time we get to April 8th, which will be my birthday, then we have this total solar eclipse. I was trying to get by it without saying it, but I couldn't. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to shift gears. If everybody wants to just take a stretch for a moment, I'm going to talk about something you can't see, but that I think is worth knowing. So I'm going to take a peek at, I can find the cursor here. everybody that's on the screen. Give me a thumbs up how things are going there on screen. All right, thank you, Dick. And so you can see this is an image of the planet Saturn. This is from the Cassini telescope or the Cassini spacecraft. So an actual photograph. Yeah. From a space-based machine. No, but artists have their hand in interpreting the image. So just to kind of qualify that. Saturn does, I mean, how many of us have seen Saturn in a telescope? I mean, it is remarkable when you see it. The smoothness of it in those rings. I mean, what it looks like, it's stunning. So Saturn, gosh, I should be able to say this off the top of my head. Saturn, it's just about to start its, yeah, it's in the morning sky right now. Saturn is kind of a golden hue. But Saturn is doing something very interesting this year, I think. And it has to do with the nodes of the moon. So I just want to describe what the nodes of the moon are so we can kind of hold on to this. And I meant to all the way back there at the beginning when I was describing the artwork in the room and expressing deep and unending gratitude for Rudolf Steiner, that it's very important when we take this journey of looking at things in the sky to remember the earth. Because even though we're all sitting in our chairs or we're sitting at our desk looking at a screen, and it seems like we're on the earth, of course we are because we haven't moved. We're journeying in our thought. And the earth is holding us while we have these thoughts. And while we go wherever it is that we go and we try to conceive of these things, the earth is bearing us. And so I just want to remember that also in what I'm about to describe, because remembering the earth will allow the thought to come more easily, because it's easy to get off earth when you talk about this stuff. Like I'm out there in space with Saturn and things are moving and how can I make sense out of that? So just remember earth. And then think of if we can allow ourselves this idea, the motion of the earth around the sun, and it has a certain plane of orbit, and then the moon orbiting the earth, it has a plane that's tilted just about 5 degrees to the plane of earth orbit. So the plane of the moon's orbit intersects the plane of the earth's orbit at 2 places, and these are called the nodes, N-O-D-E-S. And they're important looking at the, you could say, star biography of an individual, because it is believed that the nodes are deeply connected to the destiny of individuals. Or you could say the destiny of a moment. Because at that place where the planes intersect, this is where you get eclipses if the moon is new or full. The moon is coming new right there at the place where the planes intersect. Everything is lined up and you'll get a solar eclipse. If it's full, you'll get a lunar eclipse. And just to keep it really confusing, you had asked me about the difference between what happens if a lunar eclipse leads or a solar eclipse leads. Another question is, what happens if it's a south node eclipse or a north node eclipse? So maybe we can get into some of that tomorrow, but I just want to say that there's all this nuance that goes on. But so I have this imagination informed by researching astrology and listening to things that are said by astrosophers and Willie Zucker, and that the node, the south node, is as though the door through which we bring the destiny forces into this life. And the north node is what you're aiming toward. This is what I'm going to do with it. But also it's how something goes from the earthly sphere back out into the celestial environment. One way to imagine it. So if you take a historic moment, you can also look at where were the nodes in that moment. And that may have the signature of the destiny that's happening. So in 2023, we're coming to the 100th anniversary of the Christmas conference. So the nodes of the moon occupied a particular place at that time. And if we hold Somebody has their mic open, and if you could, everybody check to make sure that you're muted, that would be really, really appreciated. So during the Christmas conference, how to try to find the appropriate words to describe the sublime nature of this deed for humanity, and how a spiritual initiate undertook to enact a ceremonial rite that belongs to the progress of earthly and worldly evolution. And so what I'm about to share then is an attempt to touch that, but I mean it with the utmost respect. And as an invitation to all of us who have access to the fact that that took place, to enter responsibly into these ideas and then see, is this sounding in my experience of what this time is? Does 100 years really mean something? And in the star picture, there are definitely multiple things pointing harmoniously toward an attempt to re-engage and renew and re-enliven this that we come into relationship with by connecting to the life deeds of Rudolf Steiner. So at the Christmas conference, the nodes occupied a particular position. This year, 2023, 100 years later, the planet Saturn, it's going direct right now. It's going to start its retrograde. Gosh, I apologize that I don't have that date right at the top of my head. It's beginning its retrograde very soon. If it hasn't started already, it's this month, I think. It will retrograde and then it will go direct again, which means that 3 times this year, it's going to go over the south node of the Christmas conference. So we're 100 years down the road. So the nodes, again, thinking about them as this kind of destiny axis of an individual, or you could say of a historical event. So the south node is as though a door that's open through which something is coming. Saturn is related to Father Time. Astrologically, Saturn conjunct the south node is interpreted, it could be described as an incarnation in which the individual is given another chance to do something, to complete something that was going to take more than one lifetime, a firm foundation upon which to stand to go further into the future. The challenge is it's weighty and it can hold you back. Saturn can feel like a restriction and a confinement. So the challenge in that is to not get stuck in the past, but to recognize the foundation and go forward. This seems to be the gesture of Saturn at the south node. So what I want to share with us are the dates that Saturn is doing this so that we can all enter into as research. So Saturn moves over the south node of the 1923-24 Christmas conference. Already once it did, April 4th to the 13th. So this was during the Holy Week, included Easter. Ideally, you're keeping a journal and keeping track so you can go back and see, did anything happen? Is there anything that's sounding in my life that I might say is somehow connected to what this mystery is? Then Saturn will begin its retrograde. It will move over this spot again from August 25th to September 7th, when we have this blue moon at the end of August that is in the region of the star Fomolo. And then at Christmas, from December 25th to January 8th, almost coincident with the dates of the Christmas conference. It almost makes you cry. It's really, really beautiful. So 3 times Saturn is going over this spot. You could say out of a cosmic memory, calling us to a certain responsibility and not just turning something into a tradition and staying in a place of memory with it, but recalling this deed, that it belongs to the future, it belongs to humanity. And we who have knowledge of it have a relationship and a responsibility to that. And now I've just given us more by telling us these dates.
Yeah, that was September 1919, but going very much.
Okay, so thank you, Mary, and I'm going to try to repeat that. So was this the first teacher's course? Okay, so the first teacher's course Mary is sharing with us was coincident with the August dates in 1919. Yeah,
In school.
and the school opened on September 7th. So these are really beautiful harmonies. This is a really beautiful sounding. Rudolf Steiner says, "Such is the writing of the stars by our own deeds inscribed into the cosmic spaces." When a spiritual initiate is performing a deed, it's an inscription into the cosmic spaces. So the node is an opening, south node and a north node, they're open. And an inscription is as though made. Something is brought into being at the south node. You could say it streams in from the celestial spiritual world. It's worked with by the initiate. It's inscribed through the north node. And now Saturn is moving 3 times over that south node place. It's really strengthening. It's also awesome. It's intimidating. But then there's also a beautiful harmony in it. Not to see what my next slide was. Now I don't remember. We come to the end. So when I left Northern Michigan a couple days ago, I traveled east to New York, and now I'm here in Chicago, and it was really hot when I got here. But when I left Northern Michigan last week on the 2nd, maybe when that was this week, I don't know what day of the week it is. That was earlier this week. The trillium were just starting to bud, and then it snowed a good 3 inches before I left, May 2nd. So I'm hoping to see this when I get back home. This is my woods walk each day. This is the season when the trilliums start to really bloom. And so I wanted to read just this verse I think we're probably all pretty familiar with. To truly know the world, look deeply within your own being. And I would say, to really know the stars, we must look into ourselves. And actually, when we're looking at the stars, we are looking into our own nature. To truly know yourself, take real interest in the world. So I just really wanted to read this poem by Rilke that I think speaks to this as well. I think it has to me a relationship to why striving to understand the stars through the cultural arts, through poetry, through our own active living imagination, trying on ideas, tossing them out, following them through, classical mythologies, artwork. These things are really important because this is how we build a healthy cultural life. So Rilke had this to say: "The hour is striking so close above me, so clear and sharp, that all my senses ring with it. I feel it now. There's a power in me to grasp and give shape to my world. I know that nothing has ever been real without my beholding it. All becoming has needed me. My looking ripens things, and they come toward me to meet and be met." Okay, well, thank you. Okay, that's it, everybody. Let's see, I'm going to stop the screen share. And now all of the wonderful faces on the screen have popped up. Thanks for being there, everybody. And there is, Andre, do we have time for questions? Okay, I might need your help. Maybe, maybe not. So thank you everyone for being here. And it looks like maybe there are some questions. I'm going to let you
Much. So, dear friends, we are moving into questions and answers session. Yes, please find reactions in the bottom of your screen. It's closer to the middle. Yeah, click on it, and this is how you can raise a hand. So, yes, yeah, who will be first? Yeah, well, and we can go through. It's mostly statements.
But there's also the question about the last poem. It's Rilke, Rilke. Let me see if I have the title. I think the title is officially I Won, the number one, by Renee Maria Rilke, and it's from the Book of Hours. Sorry that I didn't have it up on the screen. It kept sounding in me after I made the slides, and with all of our tech work, I decided I wouldn't try to make another slide.
On the past.
Well, I have one.
Okay,
Now,
okay. We'll repeat. There's a question in the room. Okay, I'll do it.
like the first section that you said about the stones was it kind of observation on the earth.
Yes,
It's true, and then you talked about the instruments. Said like 200 celestial.
yeah, yes, extragalactic points.
So it's a silly question, but aren't they both tools of measurement? So there's.
Yes.
Materials and things.
Yes, so the question in the room is about, and I think it might be maybe philosophical, rhetorical, that I had made a mention at the beginning that in order to determine the date for something like solstice now, rather than using a stone megalith that's been built by human beings that is earthbound, that we are earthbound, and using that to measure light and shadow to determine the date for and time for solstice, that now we have machines out in space that are measuring things. And so what Leo was saying is that isn't this, I don't know if I'm representing it well, but kind of still the same thing. We're still creating a certain technology that allows us to measure the phenomena. And so I would say, yes, thank you for bringing that perspective. And also it does force us to expand beyond our environment, to think that something beyond what is observable by me on the earth is actually, like I'll say to myself, I'm not marking, well, I actually kind of do mark the degrees of the sunrise and the sunset because it's easy for me to watch the sun setting over the lake. And so I can tell it's going north, it'll stop, comes back south. And I know that it's equinox when it's setting right out the window.
No.
But I'm not always, I didn't build something. Did I just, I didn't build the house, but the house is set up so that it's looking due west. So I guess I would say what I was trying to point at is how cognizant am I of that? Am I doing a measurement? Am I tracking it? Am I relying on something else that isn't even on the earth that is saying, here's the time that that's occurring? What does it take? What does it take me as a human being to find solstice? So maybe that's it. And it's in every breath. It's the pause at every in-breath. It's the pause at every out-breath. That's the standing still moment. Yeah, so thank you. I appreciate the shifting my perspective. Yeah. Okay. I lost my tech support, but maybe I can manage if there's somebody on the screen that has a question. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you Sandra, thank you for putting the poem there in the chat. Anybody that wanted the Rilke poem, Sandra put it in the chat. So the question about the workshop, we're recording? We're presenting like this tomorrow for the workshop? Yes, so we will be Zooming and recording the workshop tomorrow. So the answer to that question is yes. There is a question about what's behind me. So this is a rendering of one of the blue windows from the Goethe Annum that shows the 4 archetypes. We've got the eagle, the lion, the bull, and the human being, which are also often associated with the constellations of Scorpio, Leo, Taurus, and Aquarius. So they also point to that cross of the 4 royal stars of Persia. You're right. And then also, I was asking my sister because I wanted to make sure, since we were going to have this behind us, if someone had a question, I didn't want to say, oh, well, I don't really know. And she gave me a beautiful response that and maybe others know this already, but I thought that this was really, really lovely, that the columns of the Goetheanum, let's see, how did she say this? The columns are as though the body, the cupola, the soul, and the windows. This is a rendering of one of the windows, the spirit. I thought that was a lovely imagination. I'll move the screen so you can see it. Okay, so the line, the ball, and the thing.
We
This
can't
is-
hear you again. We can't hear you, Mary.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Okay, okay, I'm not going to try showing that picture anymore. But beside it is the blue window that was opposite, that has the constellations of the zodiac and shows their relationship to the human form.
And some,
And say that again. And I can somersault. Yeah, I can try to hold the screen.
very easy.
Yeah. Okay, we have volunteers in the room to help you see it, but I'll have to stand to the side, and I don't know if you can hear me. So this is the, let's see, I think this is the blue window in the south. So it shows the constellations of the zodiac in relationship to the human form. I'm not going to speak. I'm going to step away from the screen, but move it so that you can see the whole thing. If there's interest in that, I can definitely go through it tomorrow. Yeah, and show the different relationship of the zodiac to the different, the form of the human being and the forming out of the stars. Okay. So the question in the room is, where will Venus and Mars be during the Christmas conference? I know that Venus will be square to Saturn as it was 100 years ago. I'm looking to see where my, hang on. So Venus and Mars at the Christmas conference, the 100th anniversary. So Venus will be just entering into the region of Scorpio, and Mars will be a bit ahead of her in Scorpio. And I'm going to do the quick, I think Venus will be in the morning sky by that time. Yeah, I can answer that more thoroughly tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so to just kind of follow their narrative, you can pick one thing in the sky and say, I'm just going to watch that for a few years and see what it does and track it in my life to see. Is it what everybody says it is? Does Venus have anything to do with love? Am I experiencing that? You know, and the only way to know is to research it or take somebody else's word for it. And what's that? Or do it. Yeah, just be the love. Lucian.
Can you talk more about being and that being the environment?
So the question is about me being a human being and that being a requirement to, I'm not sure I understood.
Like you, in the beginning of my say I, where I do, I
Aha. Yeah. So Lucian is asking me to qualify what I said about being human in this. And I think that to describe that a little more fully is what I'm seeking is to affirm the human being and to put the human being at the center of this, of an experience. Because I do have an experience of how we are pushed off center or not considered a valid or viable center. And that we will use laws and concepts to describe the world around us as though we don't belong to it or as though we are not generating that thought. We can see the phenomena and create concepts and ideas about them, but we have to own that we are the ones that are doing that. I am the perceiver. So I am a part of that. Well, the Rilke, I mean, it needs me in order to be. And so the thought that I can bring to it, the more fully expressed as a human being I am, then I think it helps the world and the world comes toward me in a certain way. So when I was saying about, there's a machine out there in space, it's measuring things beyond our galaxy to calculate this moment of solstice. As a human being on the earth, I don't have like you could say I have easy access to it through the internet, but do I really understand what's taking place to determine that time and that date at this point? Am I really taking myself to task as a human being to say, I know that it's solstice? Not because I relied on the calculation that someone else was doing, but am I living such that as a human being on the earth in relationship to my environment, I can say that has happened there. I think of this especially in relationship to the mystery of Easter, because it's a movable date and the moving nature of it is what keeps it living. It's not just a commemoration of something that happened 2,000 years ago. It's an event that occurs every single year, and we should be able to find it as a lived experience. And so what is that? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like and sound like? And if I'm doing a particular type of ceremony every year, one year after the next for many, many decades, I'm ideally creating a space for it to show up. If I don't have that, I mean, is it still occurring? And what does that feel like? So it's kind of like that, like coming from the self toward the phenomena, but staying aware of self. I hope that answered it. Yeah. Let's see. Wondering about was the background in the stars when the representative of man was carved, has it been repeated or will be repeated? So let's see, the representative of man, I think that was being worked on over a long period of time. Yeah, so I don't know that. I'm reading a question in the chat about what was the background, the star picture that would have been appearing at the time that the representative of man was being carved. William, I would have to look and see if there's a significant moment in that, in the creating of that work of art that could be read. I mean, certainly there's a star picture overhead, wasn't finished, right, when the fire happened. So it was not in the first Gartianum. And so maybe there is something there, some signature of it that is it being protected? Yeah. So Mary is sharing that one of the other ways to look at it is to see the biographies of Rudolf Steiner and Edith Marion and looking at what was passing between them and what's living in the star picture between them in that shared activity, which is a beautiful way to, that will take some research. That will not happen between tonight and tomorrow. But it's a good question. Thank you. Tomorrow will be recorded as well. Yes. And another question in the room. Yeah.
In a way that we're that because it, hey,
Mhm.
moment over
Yeah.
was resurrected. Let's leave that. That's very-
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So Lucian is sharing that the fire at the first Gertianum could be considered a birth moment of the representative of man because it was not placed in the first Gertianum and it was protected in that moment. I didn't say it as beautifully as you said it. And I'm also thinking that, wouldn't it be amazing to find, imagine the conversation that happened when it was being conceived. Was it spoken about? This is what this will be. Or did it come into being? And how long does it take for that to be realized? Yes. So Mary is sharing that Peter Zelg has written a beautiful, beautiful book about the representative of man. So that might be a good resource also. I'm seeing that some folks, Linda, thank you for sharing. Some folks didn't get the link for tonight and tomorrow. Can those be sent out to the registrants again? Andre? Okay, so yes, I'm going to take that as a yes, that you're going to send out information. Most of the people who come have received your emails. Oh, type it in. Okay, Andre is going to type in his email address. If you didn't get the link directly, then you can contact him. Thank you.
Yes, dear friends, please contact me, so I will send.
Looks like yes, can they still register for tomorrow? Yes.
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 Yeah, just contact me. So, Mary, can you just describe your tomorrow's presentation and workshop?
I can.
And
Oh, good. I'm going to describe tomorrow. Going to start at 11 Central Time tomorrow.
Yeah.
And finish around 4. There will be a break. There will be a lunch break and there will be some artistic activity with Lucien. And I really, you remember the title slide, an introduction to a knowledge of the stars. So I want to come at a very basic fundamental place. So I'll begin with describing the organization of a birth chart. And Lucien is we're going to have that supported through artistic activity with color and form. And even describing the relationships, the aspects, like what you hear as astrological aspects. And I'm hoping that there's going to be a lot of questions coming into the room about that will guide the process, because it's not always easy for me to discern whether everyone knows, like, what does conjunction mean, or what does, and then I want to look at certain events that happen in every human life so that we can all have an experience of that. Specifically, I would like to look at Saturn. There's an interesting phenomena in this moment when Saturn touches the node in one's own biography. So I talked about this in relationship to the Christmas conference tonight, but I think it's also an interesting thing to contemplate in your own biography, because it seems to be an activation of a certain destiny. So hopefully we can take a look at that. I have an ephemeris, so it's going to take some looking at an ephemeris on my part to get everybody's birth date to see that, but maybe I can just use it as a few people would volunteer to let me do that. Because Saturn will touch everyone's node at some point in the first 30 years of the life. For some people, it's happening right after birth. Others, it's not happening until they're 25, 26, and that's really different. If this is happening, if this is activated when you're a child, as opposed to when you've become an adult. So something is going on in the incarnational process. There's kind of an overlap, almost you could say, when this is coming as a child, before you really have awakened into this life. Something of the karma of the former incarnation is active, as opposed to when you've already been through an experience of this life and then it gets active. So again, it's a research question. I do see, Patricia, you asked a beautiful question about whether I was collecting water at Easter, and will I do that like I've done before? What I did this year, sorry that I didn't say this ahead of time, in northern Michigan on March 25th, which was the Feast of Annunciation, there was a beautiful, beautiful snowfall. So I gathered up all the snow into some jars so it would melt, because March 25th is 9 months ahead of December 25th. So this year, 9 months ahead of the second day of the Christmas conference, the first day that the Foundation Stone meditation was spoken. So I gathered that snow and have kept it. And then I have used some of it already in ceremony. This week in particular, when Mercury came conjunct the sun. And yeah, so I have that as a way to I gather water because Rudolf Steiner makes this beautiful statement that the deeds of the stars are carried in the waters of the earth. And so to take a particular moment, like an Easter moment, this year, there's a certain configuration of stars. And if that's reflected if that's carried in the waters of the earth, if I gather that water, then that can be used ceremonially throughout the year. And so I have, this year, I just went out for, well, it was frost where I was. It wasn't morning dew, but my mom and I, we washed our faces in the morning frost on Easter Sunday morning. But I do have this snow, this melted snow, which is just really phenomenal to think about what has to happen to water to become snow. And then when it becomes water again, and how so that formative force has been in it, and then it's dissolved, but it carries this moment that is like a conceiving of something that's going to come 9 months later. Yeah, really beautiful. So thanks for asking. Yeah.
Mary?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So the thing, you want paper, rulers, pastels,
Yeah.
compass. Yeah, thank you, Mika. So Lucian is going to come and speak about the artistic activity we're going to do. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so we're doing 2 artistic activities tomorrow. And if you have pastels, that's what we're going to use here. No, we'll bring, yeah. If you don't have pastels, crayons are probably better than pencils, maybe. They all work. And yeah, we're going to be working with how qualities in color, such as the color itself and the gesture of mark making, can help us develop our own perception of the qualities of the stars in our charts. See you there.
I sent only to Natalie my email address, so I will send it to everybody. If you would like to register for here's my email. So if you would like to participate in tomorrow's workshop, yeah, please contact. So we're going to conclude. So dear Mary, thank you so much. Dear friends, please feel free and unmute your machines and greet Mary.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Andre, for all the work you did to make this happen.
Thank you,
Mary.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll see you for part of tomorrow.
Okay, very good.
Have our Mayfair.
Okay, good. That's a valid reason to not be here.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, and the coronation. We'll have to talk about the starry crown and the stone of destiny. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. So good to see everybody.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you. Thanks, Robin. Bye, Barb. Bon voyage, I should say. Good to see you, Marty, and Judith, and Karen, and everybody.
Thank you.
Can't come tomorrow, but I feel quite complete after tonight. This was good.
And thank you so much, Sandra, for your support. I appreciate it.
You're very
Thanks for
welcome.
putting the Roca up there. Yeah, being on the spot. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, so the moon came up in the Eastern time zone at 9:14, or it's coming up at 9:14. So will it be 8:14 here? So it must already be up. We had a question about moonrise here.
I've got 8:29 according to my sources for where I am in Northern California.
Okay, so a little bit later than here in Chicago. Yeah, which stands to reason because it's moving also. We're moving and it's moving.
Ah,
It's on the wane now. Yeah.
yeah. Well, we're very overcast, and fortunately last night I went out, and even though it was cloudy, I got a really great view of the very nearly full moon. It's always
As did I. Why is
it's
this morning?
always as often as it happens. It's kind of like every birth, every human. It's just always kind of a miracle. It's
Yeah.
just it never gets boring to go out and it's not like same old to see the full moon. It's always
Right. I agree with you.
wonderful.
I was in New York this morning when I woke up to a single bird singing.
Uh-huh.
And I thought of Dante because I just have this obsession. Dante, when he is at the seventh cornice of the purgatory, and he says that he heard God's glad angels singing. And that line came to mind as I heard that bird. And I thought, oh, the first bird that is chosen to sing the first song, that's God's glad angel. And then I got up and looked out the window, and there was the moon setting. Really beautiful. Now that was quite a gift. Yeah. Yeah, those are moments worth getting up for.
It's the cardinal many times here who's the first one waking everyone up in our area.
Yeah, I wish I knew which one I was hearing, but just really even to think like, who says you? Psst, you. Get everybody up. Yeah. Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.